Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail into the cold northern mists, bundled in rough wool and furs that never quite shake off that smoky tang of yesterday's campfire. You're standing on the deck of a Viking longship, the carved dragon head rising above the icy waves, wind slapping your cheeks, the scent of salt and pitch so thick it might as well be your cologne. The sail groans like an old man in the wind, and beside you, a burly raider named Bjorn is eating dried herring with his fingers. You're not sure if it's the fish or his breath that smells worse. This isn't a cruise. You're headed into the heart of Viking daily lifes, including their suspiciously sparkly teeth. Don't worry, we'll get there soon. But first, you've got to survive the voyage. And spoiler alert, you probably won't. Between the unsteady seas, the questionable food, and that one guy who keeps sneezing into the Camille water bucket, it's not looking good. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like that video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a newcomer, fresh-faced and slightly underdressed for the northern chill, but eager to prove yourself. The longship cuts across the fjord with a smoothness that surprises you. Viking shipbuilders really knew their stuff. The hull flexes gently with the waves, the board sealed tight with tar and animal hair. You grip the side, staring at a blur of pine-covered coastline, half listening to the steady rhythm of oars slapping the sea. Your crewmates grunt and curse and occasionally break into song, though song may be generous. It's more like shouting in rhythm. Still, it keeps the mood buoyant. One fellow named Leaf, whose beard could be braided into a rope, offers you a chunk of rye bread that may also be a weapon. Eat up, he says, grinning. Need your strength for breakfast. You glance around. This isn't breakfast. He laughs. No, breakfast's when we stop. This is for breakfast. You chew politely, pretending not to break a tooth. Eventually, the ship noses into a rocky inlet. It's barely dawn, the horizon still painted in smudged blues and grays. The frost clings to everything: your cloak, your boots, your eyelashes. When you step off the ship, your feet crunch on a thin crust of ice, and your nose immediately regrets your life choices. The crew makes for a small camp nearby, a few turf-roofed huts huddled together like nervous sheep. Inside the longhouse, the air is thick with smoke and the tang of old stew. Someone shoves a wooden bowl into your hands, porridge mixed with goat's milk, oni, and what might be lichen. Surprisingly edible. Better still, it's warm. Here in this cozy dimness, the Viking world unfolds at its own slow rhythm. You watch as seasoned warriors sharpen axes by the firelight, mothers braid their children's hair with practiced hands, and elders lean close, sharing stories half-whispered and half-roared. You notice one odd thing: a lot of these grizzled sea wolves are very attentive to their grooming. Bjorn, for instance, has a leather kit filled with grooming tools. He meticulously oils his beard, scrapes his nails clean with a bone pick, and runs a delicate comb through his hair that looks suspiciously not cheap. His teeth, when he smiles at you, are startlingly clean, and there's a strange glint on one of his front incisors. Is that a gem? You ask. He snorts. No, just a bit of ash and style. Mainstream history teaches you that Vikings were dirty, brutish raiders. But standing here in the morning light, with the scent of pine risen and baked barley bread drifting through the air, you begin to sense otherwise. They were meticulous. Their boats were elegant, their laws complex, and their love of grooming undeniable. You even see a teenage boy polishing a comb with fish oil, humming to himself as if he's tuning a lyre. It turns out, these folks weren't just about axes and shouting, they were about presentation. And soon, you'll learn just how far that obsession went. Historians still argue whether the famous Viking sparkly teeth were intentional decorations or just a strange side effect of their environment. Some say it was for intimidation in battle, others think it was about beauty or even status. But as you sip your second bowl of questionable porridge, one thing becomes clear: Vikings cared a lot about appearances. And your mouth is about to get very clean. You wake to the sound of grinding rhythmic, low, like someone sharpening a blade right next to your ear. Turns out, it's not a blade. It's breakfast. A hunched woman near the hearth is crushing barley with a stone quern, her thick arms moving like a slow metronome. The firelight casts a golden sheen over her fur-lined tunic, and makes the rising steam from the pot beside her curl like the breath of a dragon. You shuffle over and peer into the pot. It's full of bones. Congratulations, today's breakfast includes soup. You sit cross-legged on the packed earth floor, cradling a wooden bowl of bone broth flecked with onions, dried herbs, and, yes, what looks like tiny vertebrae. The taste is salty, fatty, oddly comforting. You chew around a bit of gristle, trying not to look directly at the man across from you sucking marrow out of a femur with a slurp loud enough to startle a raven. Here, food is not just fuel, it's texture. Crusts so tough they could deflect an arrow. Dried fish that crackle when snapped in half, and greens that are sometimes just moss, if we're honest. Vikings love variety, but not necessarily in flavor. In crunch. And that, perhaps, is where the teeth trouble begins. You notice it first in your Mahler's grit. A barely there crunch in the porridge, a persistent gravelly note in the bread. It's the flour. Brown with stone tools, it often carries tiny particles of quartz or granite that wear down enamel over time. You begin to chew carefully, eyeing your spoon like it might be planning something. Historians still argue whether Vikings were aware of this dental erosion or just accepted toothache as part of life. There's evidence of early dentistry pits filled with tar or beeswax, and bones showing signs of tooth filing, but no clear manual survived. Probably because paper wasn't really a thing here. And even if it were, it'd be soggy in this damp hut. A boy named Eskil offers you a piece of dried apple. Found it hanging in the rafters. Might still be good. You nibble it and almost lose a filling. The Vikings loved preserving food, salting, drying, fermenting. It kept them alive, but it did a number on their jaws. Over time, these hard textures, combined with that ever-present grit, left many with flattened teeth and sensitive gums. But strangely, not much rot. Unlike sugar-loving medieval Europeans, Vikings didn't gorge on sweets. Their main sweetener was honey, and even that was rare. So while their teeth wore down, they didn't usually decay, just ground into smooth, shiny nubs like river stones. It gave their smiles a certain uniform dullness. Except for a few curious cases. Case in point, a man nicknamed Grettir the Glitterer, a scald poet with front teeth that sparkled like snowflakes in sunlight. Or so the saga says. Most think it's poetic exaggeration. Some suspect he filed them flat and rubbed ash or crushed bone into the surface. Others wonder if minerals in the food supply and, mica, even bits of metal dust from blacksmithing left tiny reflective particles embedded in the enamel. You decide not to ask Grettir directly. He's busy trying to rhyme fjord with sword while drinking mead. Meal done, you help clean up. This means dumping the bone bits into the midden pile outside, where dogs and crows wait with an etiquette you'd describe as none. As you toss your leftovers, you hear a crunch underfoot. You look down and realize you've just stepped on a tooth. Not yours. Probably. You bring it to the elder woman, the one who made breakfast. She eyes it, shrugs, and pockets it. Good for a mealets, she says. Or does. You decide not to press. Back inside, as the fire burns lower, you spot a curious scene. Two young girls with a flat rock, mashing herbs together with chunks of charcoal. They're not cooking. They're mixing something. One of them dips a finger into the black powder and smears it along her gum line. Why, yes. She giggles. So my teeth don't go green like Uncle Torsten's. You're about to laugh, but then she flashes you a grin. Her teeth are darkened but gleam slightly, the charcoal catching light just so. You blink. It's unsettlingly stylish. Turns out, powdered charcoal was used not just for brushing but for a kind of early Viking tooth makeup. It cleaned, polished, and at least according to some added visual drama. There's no conclusive proof this was widespread, but archaeological finds of black stained teeth suggest it was a known practice. It makes sense. Vikings weren't just raiders, they were showmen. When you're standing across from a Saxon warrior, sword drawn, what better way to unsettle him than to smile with gleaming, ominous teeth? The morning draws on. You're full, a little gritty around the gums, and more intrigued than ever about what else these people did to their mouths. Because if charcoal was just breakfast hygiene, what on earth do they get up to on special occasions? The fire in the longhouse crackles low, its embers now a gentle glow beneath the iron cauldron. Outside, a thin mist coils between the turf roofs and pine stumps, the day struggling to decide whether it wants to drizzle or freeze. You tug your cloak tighter around your shoulders and follow the others out toward the stream, your wooden cup and bowl in hand. It's time for the morning wash. You expect something rustic. Maybe a splash of cold water on the face, a quick rinse behind the ears. But no. This is a production. A whole event. The men disrobe mostly around a hollowed-out pit lined with stones, and steam rises from within like the sigh of the earth. It's a bathhouse, Viking style, a rudimentary sauna known as a sweat lodge. Turns out, these grimy raiders were close at spa enthusiasts. You're ushered in by a burly elder named Sten who smells faintly of pine and goat. Inside, the air is thick, steamy, laced with juniper branches and hot stone. The heat presses down gently, like a heavy blanket warmed by dragon breath. Everyone begins sweating profusely in under 2 minutes except you, who are already sweating the moment you enter. As it turns out, soap isn't exactly the star here. They use a mushy gray paste made from animal fat and wood ash, called lye soap. It stings slightly, smells like wet firewood, and feels like you're exfoliating with memories of a campfire. Still, it works. Kinda. Mostly. Sten hands you a bundle of birch twigs tied with sinew. Beat your back with this, he instructs. It opens the blood. Opens the what? Trust me. You do not trust him. But you beat yourself anyway, because peer pressure transcends centuries. Despite the lack of modern amenities, the Vikings are surprisingly meticulous in this ritual. They scrape dirt and oil from their skin using curved bone scrapers, rinse with cold water from a wooden ladle, and pass around a small pouch of fragrant herbs. You sniff it, thyme, perhaps, and might. It's both refreshing and vaguely alarming. You dab some under your arms anyway. You're starting to understand they weren't trying to smell good by our standards. They were trying to not smell like wet wool and weak old seal blubber. Mission accomplished. Historians still argue whether these saunas were strictly hygienic or doubled as spiritual purifiers. Some suggest they were social hubs, two places where political deals and marriage matches were brokered. You can believe it. The guy next to you just proposed a trade of goats and a cowsin for a necklace. As the steam fades and everyone cools down, grooming begins. Out come the combs, so many combs. Long combs, short combs, ivory and antler, bone and imported wood. Each person has at least one, and they treat them like prized possessions. Some even wear them around their necks, tucked into carved sheaths. You spot intricate carvings, notework, animal heads, and symbols that probably say something like Bjorn's come do not touch. You're handed one. It's surprisingly fine-toothed, the prongs delicate yet durable. As you rake it through your hair, tiny flakes of ash and dust fall like slow snow onto the mussy floor. It feels satisfying, meditative, even, like you're brushing off the night before. An older woman named Runa sits on a stone, carefully inspecting her grandson's scalp for lice. She pulls something out, squints, and flicks it expertly into the fire. You make a mental note not to sit too close. Later, someone mentions that combs were often buried with the dead not just as grooming tools but as status symbols. A well-carved comb meant you had taste, wealth, and importantly no lice. In fact, archaeologists have found so many combs in graves that they jokingly refer to some sites as hair care heaven. Some even think certain combs were used only for ceremonial purposes, like grooming before battle or before death. Back in the longhouse, everyone begins dressing again, layering wool and leather with the nonchalance of people who expect to get dirty again by lunchtime. You notice some are rubbing something on their gums, a dark past. You edge closer to investigate. It's a mix of ash, salt, and powdered herbs. Tooth polish. It's grainy. It smells faintly of rosemary and something burnt. You try some. It's not terrible, but it leaves your tongue feeling like it just licked a chimney. You ask why they bother. A young woman. Grin showing teeth that are, bizarrely, even and quite pale. My cousin says warriors with good teeth go to Valhalla faster. You're not sure if that's a joke or actual theology. But one thing is clear, in this chilly little outpost between the trees and sea, self-care isn't just vanity. It's ritual. It's preparation. It's survival. And perhaps, just maybe, it's style. As you settle in by the fire once more, you catch your reflection in a bowl of water. Your cheeks are pink from steam, your hair finally lies flat, and your teeth, well, they still feel gritty. But you'll get there. Glitter takes time. By mid-afternoon, the longhouse is alive with motion. Tools cling. Someone is sharpening a blade with a slow, circular rhythm. A pot bubbles with something suspiciously beige, and in a sunbeam near the entrance, you spot a curious ritual. A young man untying a leather pouch from his belt and laying out combs. Yes, more combs. This one is a bit of a show-off, clearly. His collection includes not only combs, but tweezers, a small bronze mirror polished to a dull shine, and what looks like a bone toothpick shaped like a serpent. The whole ensemble is arranged on a piece of embroidered wool like his presenting ancient Viking haute couture. You move closer, and he doesn't seem to mind. He introduces himself as Eric. You watch as he plucks a strand of dried sinew from a pouch, ties it around his finger, and begins flossing. You blink. His flossing. The technique is awkward, to be sure more poking than sliding, but it's deliberate, and surprisingly effective. You ask him where he learned that. My mother, he says, taught me after Uncle lost his front teeth to a piece of walnut shell. A fair warning. You make a note to chew more cautiously. Toothpicks, it turns out, are a staple of Viking hygiene. Carved from birch, pine, or sometimes even metal if you were fancy, they're often found in archaeological digs, usually worn smooth with use. Some have loops on the end, as if designed to hang from a belt or necklace. Others were part of multi-tools combined with tweezers or ear scopes. Yes, ear scopes. Don't ask. Historians still argue whether these grooming kits were personal items or shared communally within families. Evidence suggests both. Wealthier individuals often had personalized kits engraved, decorated, even inlaid with silver, while everyday folk made do with whatever twig or bone was handy. Nearby, two children are cleaning their teeth with chewed twigs. They gnaw one end until it frays like a soft brush, then drag it along their molars with impressive precision. It's like watching a tiny forest dental clinic. You're tempted to try it. Someone hands you a twig. You chew. It tastes like bark, which makes sense and slowly begins to fray. You brush your teeth as instructed. It's oddly pleasant. Earthy. Like scrubbing your mouth with a forest. A woman named Alfal joins you. She's older, with laugh lines etched deep around her eyes and a bead necklace that clinks when she moves. She's rubbing her gums with a dark, gritty powder and offers you some. It smells like burnt mint and licorice. It tightens the gums, she explains. Makes your teeth last longer. Longer than what, you ask? She smiles. Than your enemies. You're not entirely reassured. The powder is made from crushed charcoal, salt, dried herbs, and sometimes even eggshell. It's gritty but cleansing, and likely helped reduce bacteria long before anyone understood what bacteria was. Still, your tongue now feels like it scraped the bottom of a fire pit. Over by the hearth, a conversation begins about Uncle Ivar, who once bragged he could crack walnuts with his cannons. Apparently, he no longer can. The clan treats this as tragic, but also darkly hilarious. You gather that while strong teeth were prized, foolish dental bravado was not. Practicality always wins. You begin to notice something else too. Despite the occasional gaps and chips, most of the adults have relatively clean teeth. No black decay, no collapsing molars. Just flat, worn down enamel like river stones in a mouth. Their diet, low in sugar and high in abrasion, may have stripped their enamel, but it spared them cavities. A trade-off, perhaps, but a fair one. That's not to say their mouths were perfect. Infections happen. Abscesses left pitting in the jawbone. But as you sit watching Alfhild clean her teeth with the methodical care of someone spinning wool, you realize, this was effort. Daily effort. And maybe pride. You ask her if she ever considered gold teeth, as you've heard some Vikings had. She cackles. Gold is for rings, not for chewing. So much for the theory. Still, you remember stories of filed teeth. Some Vikings had vertical grooves cut into their front teeth, filled with pigment or resin. Was it for battle intimidation? Social rank? Personal fashion? Historians still argue. But one thing is certain, they didn't just live their identities, they wore them. Right down to their molars. Evening begins to fall. The sun slips behind a bank of pine trees, leaving the longhouse in a haze of firelight and chatter. Someone offers you a meat horn. You sit. It tastes of honey, smoke, and something slightly medicinal. Your newly cleaned mouth appreciates the softness of it. Across the room, Eric flashes another sparkly grin. You narrow your eyes. That can't be natural, can it? You begin to wonder, in this world of bone combs, birch brushes, and charcoal scrubs, what else did the Vikings rub on their teeth? Because something, somewhere, is starting to shimmer. Morning again. The mist hasn't lifted yet, and the camp stirs with that familiar Viking blend of groans, thuds, and the occasional argument over who stole whose sheepskin. You slip on your boots still slightly damp, of course, and wander toward the smaller hut at the edge of the clearing. This one's different. It's where the healer lives. Inside, it smells like crushed mint, smoked bones, and something deeply herbal like a potion that's been simmering for a week too long. Hanging from the rafters are bundles of dried roots and twigs, carefully tied and labeled with runes you can't read. You're not even sure if anyone can. But they look impressive. The healer, an old woman with a braid so long it could be used as a tow rope, eyes you with interest. You've got the teeth of a clay bowl filled with a powder the color of volcanic ash. Charcoal and crushed sage, she says, stirring it with a carved stick. For scrubbing. You southern types always forget to scrub. You take the stick, essentially a chewed birch twig, and tentatively swirl it through the past. It smells surprisingly fresh. The healer gestures for you to begin, so you awkwardly dab the mixture onto your teeth and start brushing. It's gritty, smoky, a little bitter. She watches approvingly, then reaches for a pouch beside her and pulls out something far more curious, a tiny flat stone with what appears to be flecks of mica. Decoration, she explains. For warriors, mostly, or lovers, or both. You blink. You put shiny rocks on your teeth. She nods as if you just asked whether boats float. Only the front ones. So people see them when you talk. Or shout. Apparently this is one of the lesser-known Viking flourishes, filing shallow grooves into the front teeth, then rubbing powdered minerals mica, hematite, even bits of bronze into the notches. The result? A grin that glints. And in battle, when intimidation could mean survival, that mattered. Historians still argue whether this was purely cosmetic or had ritual significance. Some burial sites in Sweden and Denmark reveal skulls with these grooves, while others appear untouched. Was it a regional fashion? A mark of a particular tribe? Or just one very influential warrior who started a glittery trend? The healer chuckles as you rinse your mouth with a scoop of bitter-tasting mint water. Don't worry. I won't file yours. Not yet. Outside. You spot Eric, the guy with the suspiciously sparkly teeth, speaking animatedly with a blacksmith. The light catches his smile, and sure enough, there's a gleam that's not entirely natural. You edge closer. Turns out, the blacksmith is mixing something. Bone ash, a dash of iron shavings, and crushed eggshell. He calls it fire grit. Not for forging. For brushing. It's a metalworker's take on dental care, abrasive, yes, but also brightening. You ask if that's dangerous. He shrugs. It works. And if your teeth fall out, I can make you a nice pair of bronze ones. You're not sure he's joking. The conversation shifts as a young woman joins you. Her name's Astrid, and she's preparing for her first raid. You expect her to be polishing a sword. Instead, she's rubbing her teeth with a lump of resin and humming. She sees your confusion. My mother said you don't win a battle with a blade. You win it with a smile that scares people. Astrid's teeth are polished to a dull shine. No mica, but extremely smooth. She offers you the resin. It smells like pine and tastes like tree sap. But it does leave your mouth oddly slick. You ask if this ritual is common. She nods. Before raids, or weddings, or funerals. Depends on what kind of impression you want to leave. Apparently, Viking grooming was deeply situational. And the mouth, far from being ignored, was central. Sparkly teeth weren't just vanity. They were mood setting. A kind of facial punctuation. Later that day, you help stack firewood and mend a roof corner with pitch. Your hands are sticky, your hair full of moss, but your teeth. You run your tongue over them. Smooth. A little gritty. Maybe slightly sparkly. You're getting the hang of this. Dinner is a roasted fish caught fresh from the fjord. As you chew, you realize the texture is soft, thank Odin. But someone reminds you to inspect for bones first. Last week, Leaf cracked a molar on a trout spine, they say cheerfully. You remember what the healer said. Glitter is fine, but broken teeth are not fashionable. That night, by firelight, you catch your reflection in a water bucket. Your teeth glint just a little. Maybe it's the reason. Maybe it's the mica dust still trapped between your premolars. Either way, you smile. In this world of polished axes and braided beards, you've started to understand. A little sparkle never hurt anyone except maybe the enemy across the field. By now, you've developed a bit of a routine. Wake up, cough the smoke out of your lungs, chew on something hard enough to ruin a spoon, and polish your teeth with ash like a respectable Viking. It's not glamorous, but hey, it works. Your gums still sting a little from yesterday's experiment with pine resin, but your smile has never looked more aggressively natural. Today, though, there's a new twist. A messenger arrives from a neighboring village, a wiry man with frost-tipped eyelashes, and a jaw so square it might be used for measuring right angles. He's come with news. A gathering of clans is taking place, and your host village is expected to attend. This is not a small affair. It's a multi-day event full of trading, drinking, and of course showing off. Preparations begin immediately. Weapons are sharpened, cloaks are patched, and oddly teeth get a full treatment. You follow Eric, Astrid, and a few others to the sauna again. But this time, instead of just a wash and scrape, they break out a little clay jar labeled with a rune that probably translates to do not eat. Inside is a past darker than night, speckled with something shiny. It's the special stuff, Eric explains. For festivals and feasts, you take a tentative sniff. It smells like burnt sage, mead, and the inside of a jewelry box. Someone hands you a stick. Here we go again. This particular blend contains powdered charcoal, bear fat, a few drops of lamp oil, and most curiously fine grit collected from volcanic sand near Icelandic shores. And it shimmers. Just a little, but enough to catch the firelight. You hesitate. Is this safe? Astrid smirks. We're literally about to drink fermented fish and eat sheep's head jelly. This is the least dangerous thing you'll put in your mouth today. Fair point. You dab it on. The sensation is somewhere between brushing with wet gravel and kissing a coal miner. But the result? You glance at a polished piece of iron held to the light, and catch a faint glimmer on your front teeth. You look like you flossed with obsidian. It's oddly flattering. Historians still argue whether Vikings intentionally added sparkle to their teeth or if it was a byproduct of their environment. Ash-heavy diets, high mineral water, and even tiny flecks of iron from blacksmith workshops could have contributed. But some remains with deliberate grooves and embedded pigment hinted at intention. They weren't just scraping by, they were styling. And styling is very much the theme of the day. As the clan prepares for the journey, grooming becomes communal. People help braid each other's hair, mend cloaks with decorative stitching, and yes, touch up each other's teeth. Toothpicks pass between hands like party favors. You watch someone buff their incisors with a bit of linen dipped in herb oil, then hold it to the fire for a second to seal in the shine. It's dental care meets performance art. By the time you set out, the whole group looks like a walking exhibit on rugged elegance. Your boots are still muddy, and your tunic still smells like fish. But your mouth, a shimmering beacon of Viking charm. The journey takes you through frozen meadows and over stone bridges slick with moss. Along the way, you pass other group traders from the coast, shepherds from the hills, even a few warriors from the distant Smay lands in fur-lined robes that shimmer with beads. And sure enough, as you share greetings, you notice it, a flash of polished enamel, a glimpse of filed canines, a sparkle of ash-stained smiles. It's a thing. At the gathering city, wide clearings surrounded by pine forest wooden booths are already being erected. Fires crackle, smoke curls into the gray sky, and the scent of roasted meat and meat is thick in the air. You're ushered into a meeting circle where warriors boast about past raids and farmers haggle over sacks of grain. And there, in the middle of it all, is a chieftain with teeth that shimmer like frost on a shield. No one says anything about it outright, of course. but you can tell by the way people glance, just briefly, that it's noticed. Respected, even. His teeth are straight, evenly filed, and bear faint traces of metallic glint, perhaps bronze powder or powdered hematite. Whatever the secret, the effect is undeniable. You're not sure if he could bite through a coin, but you wouldn't bet against it. Later, you speak with a woman who sells herbal remedies. She offers you a small packet of black powder. For when you need to impress someone quickly, she says. Rub it on, let it sit, then rinse with warm mead. You raise an eyebrow. Does it work? She flashes a perfectly polished grin. I have 4 suitors and a husband. You tell me. You pocket the packet. Just in case. That evening, as music begins and torches are lit, you join the feast. The food is plentiful, the stories are long, and the teeth sparkling, polished, notched, or soot-stained are everywhere. In this world, where everything from your tunic to your helmet says something about you, your smile is more than just a mouthful of bones. It's your signature. And yours is finally starting to shine. The next morning, your tongue feels like it slept outside. You sit up slowly on the straw bedding, the taste of roasted boar, fermented ani, and regret still lingering on your breath. All around the gathering camp, warriors snore under furs, chickens are pecking at spilled oats, and someone nearby is retching into a leather bucket. You hope they had a good time. You stretch and shuffle toward the wash area near the stream, priddling your teeth like delicate heirlooms. That gritty, volcanic sparkle past. Absolutely beautiful under firelight. Less so after a night of hard chewing and harder drinking. As you splash your face with icy water, Astrid joins you, still bleary-eyed but somehow managing to look radiant in that post-raid party kind of way. She rinses her mouth with warm herb tea, spits into the snow, and flashes you a grin. Still sparkly. You glance at your own reflection. Not bad. A little patchy. One tooth has a suspicious black fleck that might be soot, or possibly roasted onion skin. Don't worry, Astrid says, tossing you a twig from her satchel. Morning maintenance. You chew the end, let it fray, and start brushing. The ritual is soothing, no half hygiene, half meditation. And that's when the talk turns to modifications. Filed teeth. You've heard the rumors. And now you're starting to see the evidence. Not everyone, of course most folks here are perfectly content with natural enamel, plus a little sparkle. But a few warriors, well, they've taken things further. You meet a man named Thorgrim who smiles like a shark. His front teeth are not only filed but etched with horizontal grooves, deep, visible, and unmistakably deliberate. Some are filled with dark pigment. One looks faintly gold. You try not to stare. Battle marks, he explains, tapping his incisor. To remind myself of every raid I came home from. You ask if it hurt. He laughs. Only the first one. It's not just men, either. Later, in the trading square, a shield maiden shows off her 3-notched teeth with a grin full of pride. The trick, she says, is to make it look like it was always meant to be that way. Historians still argue whether these tooth modifications were ceremonial, status symbols, or simply warrior fashion. There's evidence of dental filing in Viking-era remains, particularly in southern Sweden and parts of Denmark. The grooves weren't random, they were symmetrical, consistent, and in some cases, filled with pigment that's still faintly visible over 1,000 years later. And it wasn't just for looks. Some sagas mention warriors using their smiles to terrify opponents, grinning wildly with marked teeth before charging into battle. Imagine that, a wall of warriors with gleaming, filed teeth, shouting oaths and showing off their battle-etched enamel. You'd probably run. You ask Astrid if she's ever considered it. She shrugs. I'd rather sharpen my axe than my mouth. But I get it. Makes you feel. Remember. That word lingers. Remembered. Later, you watch a small ceremony near the fire pit. An older man, clearly a veteran, sits calmly as a younger blacksmith carefully files 2 lines into his top teeth. No blood, just the slow, rasping sound of transformation. The man doesn't flinch. When it's done, he rinses with honey mead and grins like he's just been knighted. There's no official rank associated with the modification. But culturally, oh, it matters. You start noticing how others glance at those filed teeth with subtle respect. It marks you not just as a warrior, but as someone who chose pain, permanence, and style in one very small, very visible place. Some even combine it with sparkle. A few grains of mica rubbed into the grooves. Maybe some soot to contrast. It's dental calligraphy. You find yourself wondering, what would your marks look like? 3 lines for your 3 biggest regrets. A half circle for the time you survived seasickness on a 6-day voyage. Maybe a tiny rune scratched on your cannon to remind you not to eat stew before smelling it first. The thought is tempting. But for now, you stick to the twigs and pass. Maybe next raid. As the day winds down, and folks begin packing for the journey home, you sit by the stream, chewing your twig, polishing what little sparkle remains from yesterday's glamour. Your teeth may not be notched or gilded, but they feel like yours now. Cared for. Honored. Part of something older, odder, and more deliberate than anything you expected when you first climbed onto that longship. And tomorrow, when you smile at the sun rising over the fjord, maybe just maybe you'll smile back. You return to camp with a fresh appreciation for your teeth, and also a mild concern for them. The sparkle has faded slightly, and after a generous helping of dried lamb and barley crust that may or may not have been accidentally baked with pebbles, you're acutely aware of how fragile an animal really is. You've now entered a strange phase of Viking life, post-party, for pillaging, and very much in the mood for maintenance. The elders call for a day of rest. But rest in Viking terms means fixing your boots, darning your tunic, and grinding grain until your arms feel like they've been in a duel. Still, it's also the perfect time for you to investigate something that's been puzzling you. Why does everyone here seem to have a mouth full of sand? Not metaphorically. Literally. Between meals, you've noticed that even when people rinse, there's still this fine, powdery grit that lingers between the teeth. And then it clicks. The flour. Viking flour isn't refined. It's stone ground, literally ground between slabs of granite or sandstone. And while this method is efficient, it also comes with a surprise. Microscopic particles of stone that break off and get baked right into the bread. Over time, these particles act like a kind of slow-motion sandpaper on your teeth. Historians still argue whether Vikings were aware of this abrasion or whether they considered it just part of the eating experience, like a little extra crunch in your porridge. But dental remains show a consistent pattern, flat, even wear across the molars and incisors. Not decay. Not disease. Just erosion. You feel this erosion now, as you chew on a crust and feel that familiar creak of grit under your molars. It's subtle but insistent, like nature's way of reminding you not to get too comfortable. You ask Eric if this ever bothered him. He shrugs. We eat stone. We grow strong. Then he spits out a pebble the size of a lentil and keeps chewing. Viking resilience, it seems, applies to dentistry, too. Still, some folks take precautions. You watch a young mother sifting her flour through a woven cloth before mixing it into dough. Others rinse their bread in broth first, softening it into a texture that might be described as prehistoric oatmeal. One elderly man has taken to baking with fish passed instead of grain, citing fewer stones, more protein. But the grit isn't all bad. It turns out that the abrasive quality of the food might have helped prevent buildup. With no processed sugar, no candy, and no soft cakes, the Vikings skipped cavities almost entirely. Their mouths were battlefield hardened. Worn down, yes, but relatively clean. You also learn that some homes, especially those near volcanic regions like Iceland, had access to particularly high mineral cooking materials, lava stone, basalt, pumice. These introduced trace minerals into the food, possibly giving the teeth an unexpected benefit. Sparkle. Yes, literal sparkle. You meet an Icelandic trader named Halle whose teeth seem to catch the firelight a bit too enthusiastically. He doesn't brush with ash, he uses crushed lava rock mixed with sheet tallow and mint. The result? A paste that smells like a campfire and looks like powdered moonlight. You try it. Immediately, your gums tingle. It's not unpleasant, just assertive. Like your mouth is being gently scored by nature itself. Ollie grins as you rinse and catch your reflection in a piece of polished bronze. Your front teeth shimmer faintly, like someone rubbed stardust on a seashell. Trade secret, he winks. We call it volcanic polish. Of course, not everyone has access to this. Some make do with fish bone powder, others with ground chalk or even eggshells. You watch as one woman carefully mixes her dental paste with elderflower to mask the taste. The dental dye scene is alive and well here in Viking land. At dusk, you gather around the fire with the clan again. Someone breaks out a drum. A skald begins to chant. The rhythm is slow, hypnotic. You let your mind drift, your mouth still faintly tingling from that Icelandic grit scrub. You notice something then, as people laugh and talk, their smiles seem to glow in the flickering firelight. Not uniformly. Some glide. Some gleam. Some simply reflect a clean, even dullness. But none are rotten. None are blackened. None are the nightmare mouths you might expect from a medieval society that washes with swamp water and eats bar. The Vikings knew how to take care of their own. And their teeth, worn as they may have been, were signs of that care. You touch your own again. Still gritty. Still intact. Possibly glowing. Tomorrow, you decide, you're going to try adding some crushed bone to your scrub. Just for that little extra edge. The camp is quieter today. Even the dogs are less barky. Content to nap in the low golden light spilling over the fjord. You've been assigned to the forge, not because you're particularly good with metal, but because someone saw you staring too long at Hollis' glittering teeth and figured you might as well learn how they really get that way. The blacksmith's name is Stig. Broad as a barrel and perpetually coated in soot, he has a laugh like falling boulders and a smile that, to your growing surprise, absolutely sparkles. As he hammers glowing iron into shape, sparks flying like angry fireflies, you notice that his front teeth gleam in the torchlight almost metallic. You finally ask, "Did you polish those with lava grit too?" He snorts. "These." He opens wide. "No. That's forge dust. Forge dust." Turns out, standing in a blacksmith's smoke for a couple decades has unintended side effects. The air here is full of microscopic flecks of metal iron, copper, even traces of tint that settle on everything. Clothes, hair, skin, and yes, inside your mouth. You inhale it, Stig explains, and when you drink or chew, it settles in. Over time, it coats the enamel. You blink. So, your mouth is accidentally metallized. He grins. Let's say my teeth are as strong as my swords. Historians still argue whether this accidental metallization was ever intentional. Some theorize that smiths may have begun brushing with forged grit leftover powder from sharpening blades because they noticed the gleam. Others believe it was just a happy accident. Either way, blacksmiths became associated with gleaming teeth in some regions. And given the Viking fondness for aesthetic intimidation, it likely didn't go unnoticed. He helps Stig pump the bellows. Each gust of air turns the coals white hot, the heat blooming in waves that sting your eyebrows. He shows you how to temper a blade, how to twist iron into spiral patterns, and most unexpectedly how to make smile dust. It's a mixture of fine ground slag, leftover forge rock, salt, and bare tallow. He applies it with a finger, rubs it in, and rinses with mead. You can't overuse it, he warns. Teeth are in armor. They'll wear. Still, the effect is immediate. You try a dab. Your teeth feel gritty, warm, slightly metallic. You breathe in through your nose, and the faint smell of forged smoke now lingers in your mouth. You rinse, and when you catch your reflection in a bucket of water, yet, there it is, a glint. It's subtle. Not disco ball levels of sparkle, but enough to suggest that your maulers have seen things. Fought battles. Smiled at the gods and been smiled back at. Later that day, you meet another craftsman, a jeweler named Elvar. His workshop is quieter, filled with beads, amber, silver wires, and bits of enamel. You watch as he polishes a piece of bone inlay for a brooch. When he sees your grin, he raises an eyebrow. Then to Stig's forge, haven't you? You nod. Let me guess. Teeth sparkle like bronze now. You nod again. He laughs softly. Want to go a step further? Of course you do. Elvar shows you something rare, a tiny fragment of shell, crushed into white powder, mixed with water and egg yolk. He dips a stylus into it, and gently touches it to his own tooth. A faint shimmer appears as it dries. It's not permanent, but it sticks for a few hours. A kind of Viking tooth paint. He offers to decorate one of yours. You sit still as he works, applying a small pattern, 2 dots and a line, like a miniature rune. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't taste like much. But when he hands you a sliver of bronze as a mirror, you see it clearly, a tiny, almost imperceptible embellishment, catching the firelight just so. You won't find that in any saga, Elvar says. But I guarantee some warrior somewhere painted his smile before battle. Historians haven't found proof of Viking tooth painting as decoration yet. But given their love of ornament, personal branding, and intimidation, it's entirely plausible. If they decorated helmets, swords, and even sold dogs, why not? Teeth. That night, you return to the longhouse glowing with forged soot and enamel flare. No one comments this is Viking culture, after all, but you catch a few side glances. Someone offers you a drink with a nod of respect. Estrid notices and gives you a crooked smile. Metal suits you, she says. You grin back, your newly adorned tooth twinkling in the firelight. Maybe it's the lighting. Maybe it's the iron. Maybe it's just that you now carry a piece of the forge with you wherever you go. And suddenly, you understand something very old, very human. Even in a world of axes and ash, how you smile matters. You awaken to the sound of shouting, excited, not panic. You rub your eyes, run your tongue over your teeth still oddly metallic, and stumble out of the longhouse. The sun is just cresting over the horizon, gilding the rooftops in gold. Smoke curls from cook fires, but all eyes are on the beach. It's raid day. Not a full-blown siege, mind you. Just a polishing mission, as Ire jokingly calls it. A show of force, a bit of looting, maybe some trade if it goes well or intimidation if it doesn't. It's part diplomacy, part chaos. And like any good raid, appearances matter. You watch the warriors prepare. Armor is checked, weapons tested, and perhaps most curiously teeth polished. Again. It's become almost ritualistic now. A final check of your smile before you go wave your axe at someone. Estrid kneels by the fire with a small mirror shard and a birch tar pass. She dabs it onto her teeth and buffs with a strip of rough linen. It darkens her enamel just slightly, creating contrast with the glinting bits of volcanic grit she applied last night. The effect is bold, eerie, beautiful. You do the same. Nearby, Leaf, the largest man in the village, has opted for filing. This morning, he added 2 more shallow grooves to his front teeth. Bloodless but striking. Intimidation, he grunts, tossing you a cum. Smile before you swing. They remember that. You try not to. Imagine being on the receiving end of his grin. Before departure, the group lines up in front of the longship. The chieftain walks down the row inspecting weapons, armor, and mouths. He nods with approval at each polished display. When he reaches you, he pauses. A faint smile. Forged touch, he says. Good choice. It's not a compliment you expected, but you'll take it. Historians still argue whether Vikings truly prepared for raids in theatrical ways or whether these were simply practical choices, brushing for hygiene, filing for convenience. But the patterns suggest intention. The evidence of decorative grooves, polished enamel, and even pigment implies these warriors weren't just fighting for survival, they were performing. And performance means presentation. As you board the longship, your nerves settle. The sea is calm. The dragon prow creaks as the boat pushes off. Ere it comes a low tune that everyone joins, half lullaby, half war song. You glance at the faces around you. Faces. Archbiceps and smiled. Gleaming, grim, confident. The hours pass with the rhythmic splash of oars and occasional shouts from the lookout. You chew dried apple carefully this time and rinse with salted mint water. Even at sea, oral upkeep continues. Finally, the coastline appears, low buildings, a few fields, smoke in the distance. You ready your gear. The chieftain gives the signal, and the longship glides ashore. You don't know what to expect. A skirmish. A trade. A misunderstanding that escalates into a story no one will believe. What happens is this: you step onto land, axe in one hand, smile freshly polished, and are immediately greeted by singing. The villagers here are prepared. Not for a fight, for a feast. A coastal clan you raided last year, now seeking alliance. There's food, mead, and something that might be dancing. Awkward glances are exchanged, but weapons are lowered. Someone offers you roasted eel on a stick. You take it. It's salty, slippery, and delicious. As the clans mingle, talk turns naturally to appearance. Warriors compliment each other's armorings, helmet shapes, and teeth. You're introduced to a woman with spiral tattoos on her chin and tiny turquoise beads pressed into 2 molars. You blink. That has to be painful, you murmur. She shrugs. It makes people look twice. Turns out, her clan uses ground turquoise in their dental polish. It leaves a faint blue sheen, like frost on a blade. Others here favor different touches: sandalwood ash for scent, gold flecks from a river trade route, even pearly fish scale past mixed with goose fat. Your own forge burnished enamel holds up well under scrutiny. You feel oddly proud. That evening, you sit by the communal fire, listening to stories of sea storms and close calls. You laugh, sip spiced ale, and when someone toasts to the brightest smiles on the coldest nights, you're the first to clink horns. Because tonight, you understand, in this age of axes and ash, honor and havoc, even a raid needs a little glamour. And if someone's going to remember your face, let them remember your smile. The feast lingers late into the night. The fire crackles, sending spirals of orange into the deep blue sky. Someone is playing a soft melody on a bone flute. The air is thick with wood smoke and roasted meat. You lean back on a mossy log, belly full, jaw slightly sore from smiling too much, partly from joy, partly from showing off your recently forged polished teeth. Across the fire, a quiet conversation unfolds about marriage. Not politics, not alliances, actual, genuine courtship. And surprisingly, oral hygiene comes up immediately. I knew I liked her, one young man says when I saw her spit into her hand, check it for blood, and then chew a mint root. Romance. You laugh quietly, but as you glance around, you realize he's not joking. In this world, breath that doesn't smell like fermented trout is a legitimate selling point. And sparkly teeth, even better. Esther joins you, sitting with a clay mug of something hot and vaguely sweet. You know, she says, nudging you with her elbow, Viking love songs never mention teeth. But they should. You raise an eyebrow. You think animal's romantic. She grins. Better than breath like goat stew. She has a point. Viking courtship, it turns out, had its own etiquette. Clean fingernails, tamed hair, and yes, well-kept teeth. These weren't just signs of attractiveness, they were markers of discipline, health, and status. You didn't need to be flawless. You just had to show you tried. Later, you overhear a pair of women trading grooming tips. One swears by deer bone powder mixed with honey. The other prefers soot with elderflower oil. Both nod approvingly when someone mentions rinsing with brine after meals to keep the fish from growing between your teeth. It's a joke. Probably. You learn about one man past who used to flirt by smiling into polished shields to show off his symmetrical enamel. His wife, they say, still keeps the shield by her bed. You also meet a trader from the east who introduces you to an entirely new method, swishing pine resin with snowmelt water, then polishing with flat river stones wrapped in linen. He claims it makes the teeth harder than truth and whiter than snow. He then grins wide enough to blind you in firelight. You believe him. Historians still argue whether these romantic grooming rituals were widely practiced or just limited to higher status individuals. But Viking poetry often hints at admiration for beauty that goes beyond the physical cleanliness, self-presentation, even scent. And since scent in this world is robust, anything pleasantly neutral would have been downright seductive. You decide to try your luck. Not with ostriches too busy mock wrestling a drunk farmer, but with your appearance. You pull out your travel pouch, Dab your enamel with a bit of mint paste, and rinse with warm mead. It's slightly sticky but aromatic. And you smile. You catch someone's eye. A young woman with braided hair and a piece of amber tied at her neck. She smiles back. Her teeth are faintly gold-tinted. Not from decoration from long years of brushing with ochre clay. Still, in this firelight, it works. She walks over. Your smile is unexpected, she says. You decide that's a compliment. You offer her your birch twig brush. She sniffs it, nods, and tucks it behind her belt. I like a man who packs his own twig. The conversation drifts to family, to voyages, to how different regions treat their animal. She swears her aunt filed her teeth into triangles to scare off suitors. You wonder aloud if it were. No, she says. She married a man with square teeth. Said it balanced them out. There's a silence. Not awkward. Comfortable. The kind that settles into your bones and makes your jaw unclench for the first time in days. You smile again, this time not to impress, but because you want to. And you realize, for Vikings, teeth were more than tools. They were expressions. They spoke before words, before oaths, before axes. In a world of short lifespans and long winters, they were a way of saying, I'm here. I'm strong. I'm worth remembering. And maybe just maybe I'm worth kissing, too. The days grow shorter. The wind sharpens. You're back in the home village now. The gathering long over, the flirtations fading like smoke from last week's fires. Life returns to its slower rhythm, chopping wood, oiling roots, and of course maintaining your sparkle. You catch your reflection in a stream. The metallic glint is dull. The edges of your teeth are no longer forge bright, and the mint paste you carefully rationed is nearly gone. Somehow, you miss it. Today, you're tasked with helping prepare a funeral. An elder has passed out in battle, not from illness, just quietly in his sleep. He was a respected carver, known for his wooden masks and perfectly notched spears. His death is not marred with loud wailing but with songs, carving, and fire. You're invited to help dress the body. He lies on a bed of pine boss, wrapped in fur. His hands still curled as though he'd been shaping something even in dreams. His face, softened by age and time. But when someone lifts the cloth gently from his chin, you all pause. His teeth shimmer faintly. Someone chuckles through a tear. Still vain, even in death. Turns out, the elder was known for polishing his teeth daily with a mix of birch sap and finely ground deer antler applied with a lion cloth had kept tucked into his belt. The practice left his teeth slightly glossy even after death. He helped prepare the grave goods. Along with his favorite carving tools and an amber ring, a comb and his tooth polish pouch are placed beside him. They'll need them where he's going, one woman says. You smile. What, to impress the Valkyries? Or to shame the other spirits into brushing? Historians often debate the meaning of grave goods. Some believe they were symbolic. Others argue they were practical in a spiritual sense. But when combs, picks, and grooming kits show up again and again of an immodest graves, you start to understand. Grooming wasn't a luxury. It was legacy. Later, at the pyre, you stand with the others as flames rise, sparks scattering like fireflies. The air smells of pine, reason, and remembrance. There's no sermon, just stories. And as the flames crackle, someone recalls how the elder once tried to polish his wolfhound's teeth with charcoal and ended up chased into the river. Everyone laughs. Then, silence. The flames lower. The coals breathe out a soft glow. And for a long moment, you stare at the embers and wonder, will someone remember your teeth? The way they flashed at a feast. The time you tried blue clay and stained your lips for 2 days. Legacy, it seems, isn't always carved in stone. Sometimes it's brushed, polished, filed. Sometimes it's glitter left behind in bone. That night, back in the long house, you sit by the hearth and rub a paste of honey, mint, and crushed eggshell on your teeth. You don't do it for appearance. You do it because it feels like remembering. Estrid sits nearby, sharpening her blade. She looks up, sees you polishing. You know, she says, I think he'd be proud. You nod. Because in a world of short lives and loud exits, the quiet rituals matter. The calm, the brush, the gleam, and the fact that even in death, the elder smiled. The seasons shift. The days grow colder, the wind carries ice down from the mountains, and the fjord glazes over with a thin shimmer that cracks underfoot like old bone. You find yourself spending more time indoors, huddled in the longhouse, listening to sagas and scraping grit from between your teeth with a birch twig polished smooth from use. Tonight, the village gathers for a different kind of talion woven with legend, firelight, and a suspicious number of dental references. The skull begins, long ago, before Odin whispered to the runes, before Thor cracked the sky with his hammer, there was a god of brightness named Tandr. You blink. Tandr. Tandr of the gleaming smile, the skald intones, whose teeth shone like polished silver, whose breath smelled of snow-dipped mint leaves. You exchange glances with Estrid, who's already smirking. According to the story, Tandr was a minor god barely mentioned in the Eddas, known for settling disputes not with swords, but with dazzling persuasion and radiant grins. Enemies would stop mid-battle, blinded by the sparkle of his smile. Entire ships supposedly turned back upon catching his reflective molars glinting across the sea. You snort. The skald continues. Tander's secret, they say, was a blend of snow moss, crushed pearl, and water from Mistbrunner, the well of wisdom. Now you're hooked. Others chime in with additions. He once seduced a frost giant by smiling through a blizzard. His shield was just a giant mirror for admiring his own face. He was banished for using mistletoe twigs as dental floss during a feast. The room bursts into laughter. But behind the teasing is something real, the idea that beauty, especially dental beauty, was not just vanity, but power. Historians still argue whether figures like Tander were truly worshipped or just invented for long winter nights and made fueled storytelling. No runestones mention him, but his presence lingers in oral traditions, especially among the western fjords. A deity of diplomacy, of dazzling distraction, of tea. You ask if there were rituals to honor him. One old woman nods. In spring, we offer mint and polished stones to the stream, so he blesses our mouths. Another pipes up. A still brush with pearl dust before big negotiations. Just in case. You lean closer. Where do you get pearl dust? She leans back, mysterious. Trade secret. There's also the tale of Tander's squirrel. According to the saga, Tander once shared a house with a magical squirrel named Skargrin, who would polish Tander's teeth while he slept. But the squirrel grew jealous, so one admired his teeth, so he bit Tander in the night, causing a chip so deep it echoed across the 9 realms. You can tell if the story's serious, but someone swears they once saw a squirrel's skull with filed incisors buried beneath a shrine. The night stretches on. You begin to see how myths form out from facts, but from feelings. From the desire to give meaning to things like bone dust and birch brushes. From the urge to turn a smile into a symbol. As the fire burns low, the skald ends the tale with a whisper. They say when Tander's spirit is near, your breath smells like pine, and your enamel gleams in moonlight. A chill runs down your spine. Or maybe that's just the draft. You step outside for air. The sky is a tapestry of stars. You tilt your head, breathe deep, and smile. Your teeth catch the starlight just faintly. Tander or not, you've earned your gleam. Morning comes quietly, as if the world itself is wary from too many sagas. Frost coats every surface, and the longhouse groans softly under the weight of another cold day. You rise slowly, teeth chattering before your feet even hit the floor. You reach instinctively for your brush. Twidgets become as natural now as scratching your back or tying your boots. The mint past has run out, so you improvise with a new mixture: pine ash, ground sage, and a dash of sour mead. It tastes like burnt soup, but your enamel feels smooth. Acceptable trade. You head outside and find the archaeologists waiting. Wait, what? No, not literal archaeologists, but future ones. In your imagination, the villagers are gathered for a strange ritual, a burial in the bog. A man who died far from home is to be laid in the peaty earth, preserved not in flame but in mud. You ask why. He was from the wetlands, someone explains. He returns to them now. It's a rare choice, but one rooted in respect. And unknown to everyone, it's going to make him very famous. Because 1,000 years from now, someone will dig him up. And they will find, perfectly intact, his teeth. Historians still argue whether bog burials were symbolic, practical, or accidental. But what they don't debate is their power to preserve. Flesh, clothes, even stomach contents have been recovered from ancient bogs. But most striking of all, the teeth, untouched by fire or decay, they gleam as if freshly brushed. And some have marks. You kneel beside the body. His mouth is slightly open. You see it clearly, shallow grooves on the front incisors, shaped in a clean, symmetrical pattern. No pigment remains. No fillings. But the intention is obvious. You say nothing, but feel something shift. This isn't just farewell. It's foreshadowing. You imagine the dig site, centuries from now, bright lights, careful brushes, scholars peering through dust. One of them will gasp. Filed teeth, they'll say. Decorative. Deliberate. And the debates will begin. Was it for war? For beauty? For pain tolerance? No one will be entirely sure. Because the Vikings didn't leave behind dental records. They left behind teeth. You wonder what else future scholars will find strange. The birch twig brushes. The bone comes. The volcanic pest. Will they puzzle over why warriors had smoother molars than farmers? Will they guess that sparkle was sometimes strategy? Later, you ask the village elder about the grooves. He shrugs. We call them smile scars. You repeat it. Smile scars. It sounds like a saga title. You ask if they ever recorded why people got them. He shakes his head. Some did it to mark a journey. Some to prove they could. One man filed his teeth before asking for his bride's hand, said he wanted her to see his courage first. You nod slowly. Not everything is written in runes. Some things are carved in enamel. That night, back in the longhouse, you stare into the fire, your tongue running across your teeth. You wonder if, one day, yours will be found. If someone in gloves, and goggles will dust off your skull and say, this one cared. Snow falls in earnest now, softening the world into silence. The fjord has stilled, the boats pulled high onto the shore and blanketed with straw. You find yourself indoors most days, wrapped in wool, speaking less, listening more. Time slows. You're older now. Not old but older. Your hair carries streaks of ash that haven't come from the heart. Your hands know the memory of every tool in the village. And your smile, still intact, still gleaming in its own humble way. Tonight the longhouse is quiet. No feasts, no raids, no storytellers shouting over the din. Just a few voices near the hearth, mending gear and drinking warm mid from cups worn smooth by years of use. You sit beside Astrid. She's sharpening a small knife. The same one she's had since you met. She leans close. Do you remember the feast where Leif cracked a muller on a walnut? You nod. And then painted the gap with soot to make it look intentional. You grin. He said it was a rune for strength. Or snack. The carving was very unclear. The two of you laugh quietly. The fire pops. Someone snores from the back. Piece of a kind. You take out your pouch worn, patched, but still filled with tiny remnants of your old rituals. Charcoal. Crushed herbs. A nub of birch. You clean your teeth slowly, methodically, not out of vanity now, but out of care. Memory. Respect. You think of the ones who taught you, the healer with her twig bundles and mica, the blacksmith whose forged dust became his signature, the trader who swore by lava rock, the elder with smile scars buried in the bog. You're not just brushing. You're remembering. Historians still argue whether these grooming customs were unique to the Vikings or part of a wider, less documented trend. But you know better. You lived it. You watched men file their teeth for war and women polish theirs for weddings. You shared twigs, swapped pasts, rinsed with brine and mead. Your mouth has been a journal. Your teeth, tiny monuments. Outside, the wind howls faintly. The world is white and hushed. You feel tired in the best way, not worn down, just well used. Estrid finishes with her blade and turns to you. You still sparkle, she says. Only when the fire hits right. She smirks. Still. It suits you. You return the smile. There's a warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with the fire. You pull your fur tighter and lean back, staring into the flames. Your thoughts drift to fjords and calms, to ladder and mint twigs, to silly gods with shiny teeth and squirrels with vengeance. You never became a chieftain. Never carved a rune stone. But you smiled through it all. And that, in its own quiet way, mattered. Because when the archaeologists come, long after this roof has fallen and this world has faded, they might find a skull in the frost. And they might say, these teeth are filed. These grooves are deliberate. This smile was intentional. And someone will whisper, maybe to themselves, this one was remembered. You close your eyes. The fire crackles. You smile again. The fire has softened to embers now, and the voices around you have faded to whispers. The longhouse breathes in rhythm with the wind outside, a slow exhale beneath thick thatch and snow. You lie on your side, wrapped in warm furs, your face cooled by the winter air. Your jaw, once tense, is relaxed. The last echoes of laughter hum in your bones. Somewhere in the dark, a dog shifts, sighs, settles. Your tongue finds the edges of your teeth smooth, worn, but whole. Familiar. A part of you, not just for chewing or grinning, but for living. For witnessing every moment, from ash-past mornings to mead-soaked nights. The quiet deepens. Outside, snow falls silently across the village roofs, across the paths you once walked, and over the earth where stories sleep. Maybe you dream of fjords, or longships, or that first strange taste of charcoal on your tongue. Maybe. You dream of the sparkle that never truly leaves. And as your breathing slows, your mind drifts like smoke from the hearth upward, outward, toward the stars above the fjord. Safe. Warm. Remembered.